Today's podcast is brought to you by Progresso Talent Partners, who for more than 25 years have successfully delivered interim and permanent leadership talent to transform businesses. To hire the talent you need to enable your business to thrive, visit www.progressotalent.com today. Hi listeners, welcome to another episode of Extrology, where we delve into the science of the extraordinary and uncover those stories that inspire, connect us, and show us the endless possibilities when we follow our dreams. Today I'm thrilled to introduce a true visionary in the world of public speaking and talent management, Blair Brian Nichols. Blair is the owner of BBN Creative Management, a company dedicated to championing diverse and mission-driven talent. With his extensive expertise in strategic speaking platforms, Blair guides speakers and business leaders through the intricate world of public and corporate speaking. Blair's background is rich with experience, having represented top authors and managed a wide array of projects. His work underscores the importance of maintaining a varied portfolio to effectively compete in today's dynamic market. Join us as Blair shares his insights on fostering diverse, purpose-driven success in the speaking industry. Stay tuned for an inspiring conversation that will leave you with a sense of connection, inspiration, and a deeper understanding of the limitless possibilities that come with pursuing and realizing your dreams. So what's the story behind the story? Without further ado, let's get into it. Blair Nichols, welcome to Extrology. Great to have you here as my guest today. And for listeners, where in the world might we find you on this fine spring day?
I am back in West Hollywood, California, so back in Los Angeles, and it is gloomy in the mornings. We get the marine layer, but it'll be bright and sunny before we know it.
Well, given that I'm in the UK, as an Englishman, we are predisposed to gloomy. So it's whilst I do have some sunshine outside my window today, we are predisposed and familiar with gloomy. So you're making me feel very comfortable from the outset. I'm sure the rest of your day is going to be much brighter than mine's coming to its close. Not quite, but it's going to be certainly we're lucky that it's sunny into the evening. But you'll be due a wonderful California day, I'm sure. And I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into a whole host of topics really today. But I want to start for context for listeners, particularly if you like, from the beginning. So I wonder if you might share with us some memories of your early life and indeed your upbringing that perhaps shaped your initial interest in both literature and communication.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, reading was just such a big escape and something that I really loved. So from a young age, I was an avid reader. I would do like the summer reading challenges at the library, and the more books you read, the more prizes you got. So I was pretty much a nerd, and it always enjoyed, that side of it. But it took me until college to even, find out that there was a business behind books. And I didn't even ever think about, the industry of publishing before I started pursuing that. But I was also at a young age, we moved to the suburbs of Chicago when I was about 3 years old. And there was neighbors living next to us that also, they had 3 kids. I was the youngest of 4. And their youngest daughter was deaf. She wasn't fully deaf, like she had hearing aids that allowed her to hear and to communicate, but she didn't speak as clearly as other kids. And she obviously also knew sign language and, had her own challenges. And she and I, became great friends. I was friends, with the whole family. And she and I also started doing different activities together, like we did like arts and theater and other things like that. And when we were in mixed groups together, it was strange. I started becoming almost kind of like, not really her translator, but like really helping make sure that people understood her and she understood. And I was, to some extent, a bit of her translator, her guide, her manager. And so many years later, ending up working with speakers, working with talent, working with like diverse people. It's just when I started tracing back my own kind of life story, I almost like screeched to a halt when I remembered Tamara, because I haven't seen her in a very long time. We moved away when I was first 13, and then we moved, so I haven't seen her in a very long time. And but thinking about some of those early interactions, even as a child, like just gravitating towards people where I could help them and I could always be a communicator in some regard. So that just is something that I guess I kind of came by naturally. I am, throughout my school days, I was always active in student government and journalism, newspaper, stuff that kind of aligned to these different things. And then, that all kind of gelled together into this idea of publishing when I was in college, and found out that that was an actual job that you could have.
Coming back, if I may, just for a moment to Tamara, I think that was, you mentioned the girl's name.
Yeah.
Did she sign in terms of how she was communicating? You mentioned she wasn't profoundly deaf, but did she sign? And therefore, was that something that you needed to be able to learn?
Yeah. And so, I have it, and I unfortunately did not keep up with it, but I, for a while, knew a lot of sign language. I'd learned different things. She was able to speak, and like that was kind of part of it. Like she could speak well enough, but not everyone could always fully understand her immediately. But I know that from a young age, her parents had taught her to sign so that she could communicate even as a baby, even, as she was developing. So yeah, that was part of it, that I also kind of like, learned a bit of that language, and wish I had, stayed more proficient in it.
I think that's really insightful and really interesting. I wonder as to how it informs, therefore, at a very early age, from your perspective, that your development as a communicator, if you like, being able to communicate in all sorts of differing forms. Clearly, as a child, we're very much more, our brains are, as I understand, more malleable in terms of our ability to learn, particularly around language and communication. But the other thing that strikes me as well is, if you've a friend who's hearing impaired in the way that you've described, your listening skills, I'd imagine, were really starting to develop and becoming a real strength at a relatively early age.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's kind of what struck me about it, was like, one of the things I always prized myself on was like being able to kind of understand someone. Like when I studied in foreign countries and when I traveled, or I'm like, okay, I understand, even if I couldn't quite communicate back. And so I think that did start at that age. Like, oh, what is she trying to communicate? Like, I can't rely on her just being able to clearly articulate. So what are gathering all those other things? And I think, yeah, especially later in life, noticing like that I could just take a mental leap. Someone like, like is, when you get into that kind of rhythm with someone you may work with, and they say like, oh, I was talking to that person, and you're just like completing their sentences, kind of like anticipating what they're going to say, or because you kind of, develop those things. And I think that's always been something that I don't know. I guess I thought everyone could really do that, or it just came naturally when you knew someone really well. But I do think it's something that I started developing probably as early as this.
And what about your interest in reading? You mentioned you were a voracious reader at a young age, but also, therefore, what I'm interested to understand what later informed your interest in journalism and your participation at school. Was there perhaps a bit simplistic to assume, I'll ask the question rather than make assumption, but perhaps you mentioned you were the youngest of four. I wonder, had you siblings that were influencing your reading choices, or helping to encourage your interest in journalism? I only ask if, perhaps somewhat self-indulgently and selfishly, I'm the eldest of three. So I wonder as to where my influences came from at a young age. And they certainly didn't come from, let's say, an older brother or an older sister. Who were your inspirations as a child? What was informing those sorts of choices you were making around reading?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot came through school, or just, the library, or what was available or popular at the time. But yeah, my oldest sister was also an English major. And when she was in college, I was in kindergarten. So we were pretty well spread. My sister above me is 4 years older. So it wasn't necessarily my siblings just handing down different books, as much as like, me just, again, exploring the library, exploring different series and the classics. But definitely my oldest sister gave me some of my early favorites, like The Call of the Wild, and some other books that I know that she specifically thought that I might enjoy. But I don't know, I guess I was a little bit self-directed. I mean, I grew up in the heyday, I don't know if you had this in the UK, of like Scholastic Book Fair, and like maybe once a month or every 3 months, you'd put in your order form. And my parents were very generous when it came to buying me books, as opposed to like toys or other stuff. So that would happen, and, you'd get a whole new bunch of books every so often. So I guess, part of me was when my parents encouraged it as well. They said that they would be a lot more generous if I wanted books than if I wanted something else. So I probably just also learned as a kid, if I liked it, I could get more books, then I could get other things. So if I wanted something new, I might as well ask for that.
Were they booky themselves?
Were they readers?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And my parents, I think that's also part of it. I mean, parents read to me. They they read. I mean, we all watched TV as a family and everything too, but they always had several books on the nightstand, and we're always reading, different things and talking about it. So I think it was, just throughout my family, everyone was pretty much a reader. So it wasn't that uncommon. And I just didn't realize until way later that there's people that make all those books and that work in the offices that, publicize them and do all those other things with them.
So you coming on to perhaps more career focused questions, you've got a really impressive educational background. You've a BA in literature, you've an MBA in entertainment management. How did those experiences contribute to your career path in publishing and then speaking?
Yeah. So going into college, I thought I'd be a lawyer. I didn't really know. I thought, okay, I'll just, study law and go into law school. And that's kind of what I thought you were supposed to do. And I realized in my first year that I really didn't like my law classes. Luckily, I went to a college, an undergrad, American University in DC, that had a major that was called Law and Society. So it wasn't like I had to wait and just take English classes. But what turned out is I preferred the English classes, the literature classes. And so by the end of my first year, I was double majoring. By sophomore year, I had shifted completely to majoring in literature. And I ended up minoring in communications and gender studies. So communications was really there was PR, there was journalism, there was definitely learning a lot more just about the industry, as well as the basics of journalism writing and things like that I thought, would really help, at least from an industry perspective. And by going into my senior year, I found out about a course at Columbia that had been at Radcliffe for years and was called the Columbia Publishing Course. It had been around for 40, 50 years, and it was really designed for people who wanted to work in publishing, who had just graduated their undergrad. And it was basically like a 6-week boot camp for kids who wanted to work in publishing. So we had 2 weeks of lectures. People from the industry came and talk about what they did, so you could get different perspectives on all the different roles and departments and everything. And then we would have a week of basically Model UN. Then we could organize into different publishing houses. We were put into different houses. We all had different identities, and then we all had different roles. So I played the role, or I was interested in publicity. And so I would meet with our faculty expert on publicity, and he ended up becoming my first boss. He hired me to be his assistant at the HarperCollins Speakers Bureau, which was something different than publicity, but realized it was something kind of cool that maybe was a hybrid. I had interned at a lit agency and done some other internships in DC, and realized I didn't really like the editorial agent side. I really probably liked more on the marketing or publicity or something. So this felt like it was somewhere even beyond or in between, and kind of fell into it. It was my first job, and it was the first publishing house to have their own in-house speakers bureau. So it was still pretty new in the industry. So I kind of got to be part of something that was new in publishing. And it was right at a time when the industry itself started changing pretty rapidly. I mean, when I first started, we were sending DVDs, and then YouTube came along pretty quickly and helped change how we could share videos digitally and online. And so a lot of things changed, when I got into the industry. That led me, further along into business school. But just getting there was kind of my love of books and publishing, and just figuring out what an interesting role for me in that would be, when I knew, editing and other things like that weren't going to be it. And from there, I just kind of took opportunities as they came up, or when I was in, looking for a change or a shift, and, it led me to LA and everything else. But I'll pause there and see where you want me to dig in more.
Well, I'm interested, John. You mentioned HarperCollins. What was the name of the division of HarperCollins that you work for?
The HarperCollins Speakers Bureau. So they were the first publishing house to have an in-house division. Right.
Yeah, so I'm interested to understand what is that Speakers Bureau? I could draw all sorts of conclusions, assumptions, or not to. Describe it to me. What did the Speakers Bureau do?
Sure. Well, by nature, it represented the HarperCollins authors who, had interest or were of interest to the speakers market. Now, a lot of big authors might have already been exclusive with some of the pre-existing and traditional speakers bureaus, so they may or may not have been able to market them. And so really it was our job to like kind of look at all the other authors, the maybe if the celebrities were already represented or whatever, then we're looking at like kind of the next tier down. But because speaking had been an industry that had supported publishing and was kind of adjacent to publishing, forever, it was just an idea that it would be a way to continue promoting their authors and selling books. So really, it was just they wanted to sell more books. That's what they do. That's their bottom line. The money they made off of the speaking commissions was, to pay us. It wasn't like the bottom line was just how many more books can we sell if we are actively, offering the authors, if we are taking more of a proactive approach to getting them out there. And then having people in-house who are making sure that books are part of every, speaking engagement and are somehow managed, etc. So that was really more what their goal was, and just to be able to, have another way to differentiate themselves as a place that you might want to choose when you're deciding who to publish your book, but also, as another opportunity that you can continue doing promotion when the publicity period ends, 3 months, whatever, after your book comes out, and then you don't have someone that's working on your behalf. The Speakers Bureau was a way to extend the relationship and give you a resource ongoing as well.
Which makes perfect sense to me. I'm somewhat self-indulgently, maybe selfishly, but reflecting on my own experiences as an example. And you mentioned the way that technology has transformed access perhaps to authors or speakers. I'm reflecting, I saw Robin Sharma, who's the author of the 5 a.m. Club. I'd seen Robin Sharma speak on YouTube. I'd then seen him speak I'd read the 5 a.m. Club, but I'd seen him speak at an event, I think, on stage that was on YouTube. Might have been a live event, but I saw it streamed. I can't quite remember. But I then subsequently bought his next book. So I thought, what a really interesting guy. I'm really interested as to what he has to say. I'm interested in his perspective, in his ideas. I bought his new book, which was the reason why it was, it wasn't specifically promoting that book, but it was the underlying purpose as to what it was that he wants to achieve. So it's the two things inevitably are aligned, just even based on my own experience.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you've got a captive audience, literally, when you're speaking to them. And then if books are available, and of course, it's a lot of commitment to say, I want to actually read someone's book. But if you can sit and listen to them for 30, 45 minutes, and that's the power of a keynote. It really is a way to introduce yourself, a big idea. It shouldn't be, you're not, trying to do a masterclass in 45 minutes. Like you can't distill your book into a keynote. It's just an opportunity to get people excited about reading the book or working with you, further, etc. So it's a really great opportunity, I think, for people to be introduced to new topics, etc. And absolutely a great vehicle for their books, which is why podcasts are also a great vehicle for authors and speakers, because they get the same opportunity to really share stories, and you get to hear a little bit more about them than, quick media hits or, short reviews from critics.
So I wonder if you could perhaps tell us about some of the pivotal early moments in your career that helped set the direction towards founding BBN Creative Management.
Sure. Well, after I was at HarperCollins Speakers Bureau for a couple years, I was beginning to think about what's next. Since we were such a small department, there wasn't a ton of upward growth or mobility. And, frankly, I wasn't sure if this is what I wanted to keep doing forever and what that might look like. So as I was looking at other things, there was an opportunity at one of the larger speakers bureaus in New York, and it simply said lecture agent for authors. And, I was basically assistant to the director, and I had taken on some clients myself, quote unquote, but, I didn't have like title of agent. So this seemed like a step up. I went and met with the CEO, and what he described to me is that I would be running this division. I was 24 at the time I interviewed. So again, just a couple years out of college. I'd be running this division, and it wouldn't be just one publishing house, it'd be two. And naturally, since I'd been doing this for 2 years, I told him that I knew everything about it and could absolutely do that. So for some reason, mostly because I probably was very inexpensive to hire, he hired me, and I had the privilege of jumping from assistant to director of the Hachette and Simon & Schuster Speakers Bureaus at the same time, and growing those over 3 years. Revenue for Simon & Schuster in particular doubled every year. So I got to meet with their CEOs. I met with, all of their publicity teams and their sometimes editors, if they were like super important editors, to go over upcoming books and talk about different authors that I was interested or that they were interested in me working with. And so I got this like incredible opportunity at a very young age to meet with really high powered people and to basically be the decision maker on who we worked with or who we took on. And just, they really obviously valued my input. So from that early age, I really got a much elevated view in this industry. And now I'm a member of the International Association of Speakers Bureaus, but we were a member as the agency I worked for. And because of that, the division, quote unquote, that I ran. So my boss thought it'd be a good idea for me to attend this. So 2012, I got to attend my first IASB meeting. Most of these people are the heads of agencies. It's not the entire staff. It's not all of the agents. It's not their marketing team. It's usually one or two people from all of the different agencies. And now I got to be there meeting them. I've now gone to that event 3 times as my own company, or it'll be my 3rd time this fall. But what's funny, it's the same people. But they were 20 years older than me then, and they're 20 years older than me now. But they've known me, for the last 12 years because I got to do that. So it kind of helped pave the way for me to see what that would look like and who my peers would be, and already kind of established me at that level at an early age in that position. Now, from there, I thought, well, this is a lot. I've got so many clients. Every quarter, there's more authors. It's exhausting, frankly. And as much as the division was growing, I just had a couple people working for me. It wasn't like it was a huge scaling thing. And I felt just overwhelmed with not being great for all of these clients, and realized that, I really love the idea of management. So way back in 2012, I'm thinking about, I just want to manage my own list of speakers or people, talent. I don't want to just do speaking. How do I work with them across all areas of their business? And how do I get to choose who I work with and not have to be limited to this list or that list or who's this or that and who my boss wants or otherwise. So this was kind of like the beginning of that whole idea, was still in New York. How do I do that? How do I get there? And I thought, well, I got a literature degree. Even if I'm smart and have done well, I probably need an MBA. I really feel like I want to round out my skills with something higher level. And what New York has that I'm interested in is publishing. And I've got that connection wise, etc. LA has everything else. Really, if I want to, bridge into other areas of media and entertainment, it would really do well for me to expand my New York network. So, this kind of just narrowed to UCLA has this amazing entertainment management program, and started studying for the GMAT and applied. And while I was waiting to hear from them, I got recruited for a job in LA. So while I was waiting to, give up my job and go to business school full time for 2 years, and, whatever that looked like, whatever that meant, debt wise. And if I had done that and gone into the full-time program, I might have gone into consulting or finance or one of these really lucrative MBA type jobs, because that's kind of where they steer you in a full-time program. But I took the job working for Keith Ferrazzi in LA, who was a thought leader, speaker, author, basically running his speaking business. That moved me from New York to LA, deferred myself into, basically waited a year and reapplied and went to the part-time program, which ended up working out so much better because most of the people in the part-time program, it's what we call the fully employed program, were people working in entertainment because no one was giving up their jobs to get an MBA, no one was, like losing out on a paycheck while trying to also pay for a degree. So I was with the right people and in the right industry, and it was, even better aligned. The job was hugely revelatory because I moved into a position where now Keith was leveraging speaking for thought leadership, for consulting, for high level coaching, for all the products and services that actually made more money than speaking, or that, could potentially make more money than speaking. So I moved from this agency side / how many books can we sell per event to, oh, speaking is highly strategic, and those, like, this is how this person is leveraging it. And also every time he's on the road, how are we leveraging his time and who he's meeting? And so it's like supercharging everything. And I digress about sharing too many of the details of my experience, except that it was super stressful and a lot to be dealing with someone like that at that level, learning that while also getting my MBA. So by my last year, going into my last year, I left to do an internship at DreamWorks. They had just been acquired by NBC Universal. So another great time to join a corporation that was not in any position to hire me because they were firing people by the time I left. But I still had a great summer working with them and doing something a lot more relaxing than what I'd been up to. And I spent my last year of business school kind of sorting it out. I ended up TAing a bit and just kind of taking some shorter term gigs. And I went back to an agency based in Santa Barbara when I graduated. It was my best opportunity, just where I was at. And I knew, there was times, and even when I did the part-time program and I was around people in entertainment, that I was still thinking, maybe I should go corporate HR. And when I took the internship at DreamWorks, I had been offered an internship at Gap in their HR global supply chain division. And you can guess they paid a lot better than DreamWorks, but it really just didn't sound like it would be my dream. And I'd have to go and live in San Francisco for the summer. So it's pretty much a wash. Like the money I'd have to spend to do the internship would be pretty much equal. So I had the corporate experience anyway at DreamWorks. So I saw what corporate entertainment was like and realized I still don't love that. I still don't love corporate. I still don't want to just be a corporate HR talent management function. So I guess I just got to keep moving ahead until I can make that transition over to my own. So I went to work for Big Speak. I helped build their talent, kind of had the same challenges of who they wanted to sign versus who I wanted to work with and what our focus should be. And left there in 2019 and really started building my business. So that's a lot. So brief history.
I'm interested, if I may, to go back briefly to the MBA, and I'm interested to understand what you got out of it, what you feel you gained from the experience.
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, being able to specialize in entertainment was, one of the few schools that has that and that can credibly claim, that they can really show you the inside of it. And so we had people like Steve Ballmer and also, gosh, it's the first and only name I can think of right now, but like all sorts of amazing like CEOs, luminaries, people from both the entertainment world, the sports world, all of these different leaders coming through all the time just to talk to us. So we had incredible exposure and access to the highest echelons of this industry that you're really not going to get outside of LA or New York. And even in, you're going to get different sides to it. So I feel like I got a really good education in just all different areas of the industry and how it all kind of really works. The different business models. Again, I was a lit student. I didn't take any math in undergrad because I didn't want to and I didn't have to. So I needed to brush up on some of my quant skills. Again, if I want to take some 10% of someone's income, I think I should at least be able to make sure the accountant isn't screwing us or something. So, just the basic quant stuff that I wanted to take from it. But I think it was also a big confidence builder. It made me a lot more confident in my ideas and that I have an understanding of all these different areas of business. Obviously understanding where I don't have an interest or a talent or even a necessarily good understanding and need other experts to really advise me in. Like, I'm never going to be a big quant financial analysis person. That's just not who I am. They talk about MBAs as poets and quants, and I guess I'm much more the poet side of that. But, I think also I'm involved now with the board of directors alumni board at Anderson. And so staying involved in the network and the community has brought me opportunities, and obviously gotten to know a lot of different people that way. So yeah, for me, I think it was both an internal thing that I felt like I needed to kind of have the confidence to be able to go out on my own, but also I did gain a lot of knowledge, across a general spectrum of business, but specifically in my field, that I can feel very, confident that I understand, kind of the ins and outs of what's going on. And I can glumly describe to all my friends what these different mergers and acquisitions and entertainment mean, because that's pretty much what the history of the industry is all about.
So you chose to focus on, as I understand it, certainly with BBN, you made the decision to focus on diverse and mission-driven talent. Was there a particular gap that you saw in the market, and therefore, how did you arrive at that decision, that focus?
Yeah, well, thank you. From my early days at, running the bureaus in New York or working with talent in New York, most of the highest paid speakers across all the business categories were white men. This is not going to shock you or anyone else. Or they were ex-presidents, or they were if think about the people who were highly paid in the early 2000s, it's, the former CEO of GE. And it's not a super diverse group because there's not a ton of female CEOs. There's not a ton of female best-selling authors in these categories. The world was still very homogenous in this space. So when there was a person of color, they were put in the diversity category by default. And it was pretty ridiculous, because so all along the way, I saw, where the prioritization was, where the vast majority of the talent was coming from, and where we would always get these requests for, well, we want more diverse options, or we want this or that, or we need this. And you'd be like, okay, here's one woman, or here's one person of color. And I guess over time, I just developed a point of view is we need diversity in every category, in every vertical, every industry topic, whether it's leadership or change management or AI or all of these things. We need different shades of diversity and people in all of these conversations. So my clients don't even their topics are not diversity. They can, but they don't talk about DEI. They talk about burnout and imposter syndrome and the future of work, and they bring their perspective to it. So for me, it was about, I've always just been a champion, I think, for diverse and underserved communities and voices, and wanting that as part of my goal. But also the people that I worked with along the way in the last 17 years, the ones who are mission-based, the ones who have speaking because they have a purpose for it. And a lot of these people who are diverse, they are gracious and grateful and excited about the opportunity they have for these platforms. They're the people that I enjoyed the most working with. And there's been a lot of, narcissists and ego-driven people, and a lot of people that aren't so great. So for me, it's also about a way of filtering out, a-holes or other people I just don't really want to work with. I can tell pretty easily, what you're in it for, or, what it's going to be like to work with you. So I try to, use that as maybe a way, if someone sees themselves in this way, they're probably going to align with me more than if they don't see themselves as someone who's mission-based or purpose-driven or diverse. That might turn them away, and that's okay.
So what about some of the, inevitably starting a business comes with its challenges. What were some of the obstacles that perhaps you faced, and how therefore have you overcome them?
Yeah, I think the hardest thing in this industry is that it is more and more crowded every day. You don't need to be represented by an agency or a manager in order to be booked as a speaker. You can get yourself out there very easily online. You can do everything that the agencies and managers do yourself, and you can be reaching out to them on your own. So even me, as someone who's known in the industry, who has relationships with agents at pretty much every agency and has worked with them for years, launching a new thing and asking them to pay attention to my clients and new people and get them excited about, and figuring out kind of my niche and point of view. I think is always a new uphill battle. It's just a new introduction, even to a warm market. So for me, it's been about that and about getting the word out about how I'm different. There's a lot of, in this industry specifically, people really function as brokers. Managers might oversee more of the process for you personally because they're working on every deal for you, as opposed to different agencies all kind of working on different deals. But they're still kind of involved into the transaction side of it. And they often are not as involved in helping think through, how do you scale beyond your speaking, or how are you building a sustainable business around the speaking? Because speaking is only one channel of revenue. And if we have another 2020, for a lot of people, they had zero revenue because they had really built a great speaking business, but they had nothing else around it. So I really work with people from like the ground up or wherever they're at to say, yes, let's figure out how we grow your platform so you can get more speaking. But you also need to be thinking about like, how do I get that audience on my email list? How do I then sell B2C products? How do I, if I'm going to do corporate speaking, what are my B2B offerings? Like, how do I go beyond the keynote? How do you go beyond that? And you need to start planning that and planting those seeds even before you're getting invited for 20 different keynotes a year. Whereas I see a lot of speakers are so successful and they're out there doing it and they're like, yeah, but I haven't done any of that yet. So to me, it's just money left on the table. It's just time, not time wasted, but time not optimized. Every audience, I've got clients now who are getting 80, 85% of that audience to, just sign up for their one free thing. And now they've got them as potential customers or clients, and they stay in front of them with, people will get booked for more speaking years down the road because but they have to remember you. And so you have to have a mechanism to continue to engage with them. But a lot of speakers just expect it to happen. Oh, they'll go find me, or they'll follow me, or I do my thing and I give out my slides, but they're not as proactive about it. So for me, it's been about getting that message out while also not, stepping on too many toes of my peers in the industry, because it's just more what I'm interested in. I want to go beyond the speaking strategy and getting you more speaking to the actual business strategy that you need to be a successful speaker nowadays, because it's not enough unless you've just got best-selling book after best-selling book. You're not going to be making millions of dollars from speaking. I'm sorry, you're just not.
Is that what you mean by building strategic speaking platforms?
Exactly. Yes. So having an opportunity to speak to your ideal clients might be worth more money than they could pay you to speak there. So there's all different ways to think about it. Like if you are really niche in what you do, and speaking to orthopedic surgeons is going to mean that, like, if you get 5 of them to sign up to work with you, it's going to mean 6 figures, 7 figures or something. Then why wouldn't you pay $50K to sponsor an orthopedic surgeon event and speak on the topic of your choice or whatever that may be? So there's strategic speaking that a lot of people overlook and ignore, or they think it's pay for play. Yeah, it's called marketing. It's called advertising.
Yes.
It's called thought leadership, and it's business. The only business of speaking is not getting an organization to pay you to come speak. And if it is, it's pretty low fee for a long time. So what are you doing to support yourself in the meantime? And what are you building around it so that, eventually you won't be looking to do 100 events in a year. You're going to be thrilled about doing 10 events because every one of those events is going to be a 6-figure event from the money you make on the back end, even more than what they might pay you on the front end. So again, it's just a strategy of how you maximize every opportunity and how we grow your platform to generate the demand for that speaking. But then what do you do with it? And then what do we do after? So yeah, it's kind of a cycle, but it's an iterative cycle for people that they, kind of layer it on as they go.
So what does Blair, for you, what does a typical day in the life look like? Could you walk us through your regular day, and therefore how do you balance perhaps professional commitments with your personal interests?
Sure. I do more coaching than I have more coaching clients than I have management clients, but I probably spend more time talking to people around my management clients than talking to my coaching clients. So a day could, be 1 or 2 hour long coaching calls, talking through kind of what we're talking about, first building your speaking platform, and really helping them figure out their unique value and how they can position themselves in the market, why their topic is relevant, how to position that, and then how to go to market. And then again, that like business creative strategy side of it, and just kind of piece by piece by piece. And then also, talking to people who are either requesting my speakers. Sometimes, I handle all of the speakers I manage. If they get a request, from Discover or from United Healthcare, I get on the phone and I talk to them about booking that speaker and, close that deal and get that going and get all the, contracts going on that. Or I'm working with an agency partner and they're recommending one of my speakers or one of my clients, and they're asking for information or confirming availability, or, they're kind of the medium. So, I'm the middleman, the manager, the communicator, the translator, kind of moving emails around. So there's a bit of that, and just, trying to get things done and keep things moving along on events that are happening, and making sure that people are getting all of what they need. Because once it's booked, there's all other folks who take over, who take on logistics and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just kind of like the management of deals and anywhere in the pipeline, coaching, and then talking to other people like you, talking to like just having meetings with potential new clients or other potential partners or people that would refer people to me, stuff like that. And, what's nice is that because it's my own business, because I've been working from home since 2017, I like that I don't have like a 9 to 5 schedule. Like I can stop and walk my dog, or I have time to go to the gym. Like I just kind of flex around what I've got going on. And because a lot of my work, when I'm not sitting in front of a computer because you want to be present for a video call, I can take my phone with me anywhere and answer emails. So I might be sitting in the dog park, or I might be, traveling cross country, but that's a nice thing about working where you want. And that's what I always wanted for myself, to be more bi-coastal, to have this flexibility and travel. I love travel, and the things that this job allows me to do supports those personal interests. So I've really worked hard and over the course of my career to almost shape my career around also my interests and what I know serves me best. Going to an office every day does not. Commuting every day does not. Staying in the same city for months at a time does not. So yeah, that's I guess what it looks like in, usual day or week for me.
So who or what perhaps inspires you?
Yeah, I mean, the clients that I work with and the people that I don't work with that are in this industry that have been, that have done a really incredible job of growing, people I've seen from, start. And even if I've never booked them or never even had a conversation with them, just some of the people that you've seen grow up in the industry and doing a lot of great stuff. I've always been a big reader still. So authors and, media personalities, people who are, I don't know, in some way doing activism as well as journalism, as well as writing books. Like, politics is like, I don't want to represent politicians. I don't want to be involved in the controversies or anything else, but that's my other like politics. And that is like my other passion. So just more of my interest in that area, like people in that space, probably for the most part.
So who would you say perhaps are your current role models?
Oh, that's a good question. There's Tony D'Amelio, which I don't know if he'd listened to this podcast, but he is a manager in this industry, and he's been one of the first to kind of step out of a big agency and just manage and he represents people like Bob Woodward and really incredible luminaries who've been around for a long time. Yeah, he's just someone who's had great clients his entire career, really great integrity. Everyone loves him. And, will also be outspoken about his beliefs. Like he's not afraid to, just shy away from politics or other things in service of not ruffling any feathers. And I appreciate that about him. Otherwise, I think, like there's just probably like people in politics or people in government that are really actively working for more progressive change and things that are happening. And, like it just feels like every day there's new people doing new and exciting things that are counteracting, any of the bad that we're always kind of being dumped on with.
So, what advice might you give anyone who's looking to kickstart a career in speaking?
I always just say speaking begets more speaking. You got to start. You got to get out there. You can't wait and say, well, when my topic is perfect or when my speech is perfect or when I know my topic. No, just volunteer for something. Go give a talk at your kid's school, your church, your company, wherever, your friend's company. Just, volunteer and share something and you'll see what kind of impact it already will have. And that's where new invitations will come from. So, I think you got to just start doing it in any way you can, because like anything, it's a lot harder to just practice if you never actually get up and really practice it. So I'd say just look for opportunities. Look for opportunities. It'll be scary. You could do Toastmasters. You can do all sorts of different, formats of where they actually help you kind of get started if it's something that's really scary for you. But we've all been doing this for 4 years at least on camera. It's not that different staring out there, just talking. So, just give it a try. And I think you'll be happy that you did it.
So, what are your hopes and dreams for the future of BBN Creative Management?
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, I'd love to scale and have more people working, for me and with me, and really move beyond, like I said, just the speaking, brokering part of it, and really helping my clients, which I am now, but even more so growing their products and services lines, which might mean creating new companies together, which might mean, launching new projects together, doing more media projects, selling my first like TV film project, other things like that, where as a management company, I feel like we can cover all of that as opposed to being siloed to one area. So, my goal is just long-term relationships and growth with my clients, supporting them in their different goals and their dreams. And a lot of those include the things I'm talking about. So I'm fairly confident that someday, we'll be able to be in kind of all of those worlds, and hope that we also are, solidly part of the speaking world as well.
So, how therefore perhaps do you see the landscape of public and corporate speaking evolving? I'm intrigued because I've got, my mind is going to all sorts of places, particularly around the platform that technology affords us to reach a huge audience potentially. But where do you see the landscape? How do you see it evolving? Where's it evolving? Where are the opportunities, do you think, moving forward?
Yeah, well, I think after the pandemic, it was like, kind of a backlash to virtual events, so
Yeah.
obviously those are not, companies are not planning everything virtually. Everything is not, going to be that way because people prefer an in-person experience. That's still a huge part of the industry. But I think what we saw is that there's always going to be virtual events. So always still being adept at that as a speaker, being able to pivot to doing something virtually when needed and being able to like do that, in a more flexible setting. And also that even if you are doing an in-person event, even if you are doing that, there might be hybrid elements. So I think like there's just so much more technology. Every event is like being in like a TV studio now. You're like, there's multiple cameras and there's a lot more tech in AV. And if they are live streaming it, so it might just mean like, speakers, people who are, the higher up you go, you just might have to be that much more adept with how you're staging your directions. You might need to do more rehearsing for these things in the higher level. I see that more for high level events. I had a friend just fly to Chicago from LA to rehearse an event that's happening in October in Dubai. So, it's a big, some of these big events, they're getting bigger and bigger and more choreographed. And so that means more on the speakers, but probably higher level as far as what you can demand in regards to fees. And then just being adept at like starting out, a lot of companies are doing virtual events because they've got people in 7 different offices and they're not going to bring everyone into one office for every single thing. If it's their women's leadership event or one of their ERG groups, I book a lot of still virtual things. So I would just say like making sure you can really kind of do it all, and that when someone's evaluating you as a speaker, they can see you in virtual formats as well as in in-person formats and see kind of your style, and this kind of accessibility of video is like more now. Like now as a speaker, it's like there's no reason why you shouldn't have current video out all the time. Whereas the norm used to be like you had one video, one reel, maybe some clips. Speakers are a lot more like influencers now. Like, if you want someone to book you to come talk, like we should see you talking on your social media. And there's still a lot of people who, might hide behind a blog or hide behind like just their thought leadership, and they're not, as comfortable, but they need to be. And that's like where we've gotten to. It's not just influencers pushing skincare and vitamins. Influencers across different media, our speakers are the people who, especially the next generation, are going to be booking and bringing in. And if you're not talking to that audience, then you're going to be missing that audience. So I think the good, bad news for speakers is there's a lot more opportunity, but there's a lot more competition. And because there's a lot more competition, there's just a little bit more on you to make sure you're kind of covering your bases as much as you can. But start small. Start with a niche group, start with a niche audience, really like hyper focus and let it grow beyond there so you don't have to overwhelm yourself, and you're not going to stand out if you don't do that to begin with. So, again, that's kind of the balance is like you start with really where you're most concentrated, and you can grow beyond that because of the momentum you get from that. And then maybe you don't feel as overwhelmed trying to do all the things on all the platforms, but you can really just like speak to your ideal market, speak to your ideal audience, and figure out when you need to go beyond that.
Do you find this is? I'm intrigued to understand, perhaps in your experience, if there are some who are better suited to different platforms. Do you know that you ever get that sense that with some people, they've such energy when you're in the room with them, and does that energy therefore naturally translate to video or other media in the same way, or are some people just better suited to in person? What's your experience in that respect?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's never going to be the perfect representation. I mean, and video is only going to tell part of the story, but it's going to give people so much more than if they're only reading, your articles, if they're only, like not engaging with you, hearing you, seeing you, communicate. And I think there's definitely room for that. What I love to do, and like when I'm helping a client produce, a sizzle reel or something, is like intermixing interview footage where there might not be looking straight at camera, but you're just getting them kind of talking a little more naturally, a little more conversationally about their work, their topic. So you're not just seeing the hype person on stage, or you're just seeing kind of the in action in media race like version. You're getting a little bit of like, let's pull away. Let's sit down and talk about this too. So I think it's important really actually to have all those different kind of sides reflected so that people do see kind of the different dimensions. And then your job as a speaker is to really understand like what they want you to bring in the manner of energy. What sort of objectives do they have for their people? What do they want them to feel? The best speakers always ask, like, what do you want your people to feel at the end of my talk, and what would you like want them to walk away thinking or having learned or something like that. They, if you can address their goals and do that, then like that's how you win as a speaker. But if you don't know, then you're, aiming at a blind target. So understanding like what they want you to bring to this event or how they want people to feel, et cetera. And it's always going to be like inspired or like motivated or this or that but oftentimes we're going through a big change and we just really want people to feel like supported, and we want our people to it's really important for the speaker to understand almost like how they are going to create that emotion, because that's really what they're hiring you to do. They're not hiring you to teach them anything in 45 minutes, because again, that's just an introduction. No one's going to master something in 45 minutes. You're getting them to open their eyes, their mind to a new idea, to a new something. And that is going to make them feel excited, inspired, motivated, supported, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that is what's going to make them remember you as the speaker. Because if you can create that emotional connection, both in your beginning and in the end, and then that's what the meeting planner wants, Like that's your standing ovation. That's getting you booked again. And that's what separates the great keynoters from subject matter experts or other speakers who get up and tell stories, and maybe they leave you with a resource, but they don't practice enough storytelling to create an emotional connection, an emotional response. That's really what I think keynotes need in the beginning and the end.
So you talked there about connection, and I guess therefore how speakers leave people feeling how they connect with us emotionally. What about your own legacy? What kind of legacy would you wish, impact and legacy, if you like, would you wish to leave within the speaker industry, speaker community?
Yeah, well, I guess, since I feel like I am an advocate for, maybe not disadvantaged voices, but maybe just championing other voices that aren't maybe going to get as much of that attention or something. I hope that my impact is that I was a champion for great talent, diverse voices, progressive causes to some extent, and that the people that I worked with felt like I did so with integrity and with love, and that added more to that relationship than taking.
Well, I think, Blair, I guess to somewhat cliche bring it full circle, but the thing that strikes me about your journey is that you started off talking about your childhood and taking a very active participatory responsibility, if you like, to ensure that people could be heard. That may seem a little clumsy to draw that analogy, but I'm reflecting back on Tamra. I think your childhood friend you described, who was hearing impaired, and you made it your mission to help her to ensure that she could be heard amongst your friends. And here you are again, years later, making sure that people with diverse voices you're empowering diverse voices to ensure that people can be heard again, and making a career from it, making a business of it. So that may seem like a clumsy parallel for me to draw, for which I apologize, but it does strike me that there's that sort of natural evolution around the journey that you've had. And it's a wonderful story that you share. Thank you for sharing it with us.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, it's strange when the further you run from your destiny, the faster it catches up with you, I think. So
that's a wonderful phrase.
I appreciate you allowing me the time and space to share.
Well, thank you. Blair, where should we be pointing listeners, those that want to find out more about BBN Creative Management, more about you? Where should we be sending them?
Absolutely. You can always find me on LinkedIn, Blair Brian Nichols, and Instagram. But you can also check out BBN Creative Management and check out our services page and sign up for a free 30-minute call. And I'd be happy to spend some time with you and figure out what your next step is.
Blair, it's been a pleasure to speak with you this afternoon. Thank you for sharing your story with us on Extrology. You've been a wonderful guest, great, really entertaining, really insightful, and given me plenty to think about when it comes to public speaking. So really appreciate you taking the time out, and my very best wishes for your continued success. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening to today's Extrology podcast. I really appreciate your audience and ears. If you've enjoyed it, then why not hop onto iTunes and give us a review? I'd really appreciate anything that you might have to say. Any feedback always gratefully received, and look forward to hosting you next time. See you soon. Just a reminder, today's podcast is brought to you by Progresso Talent Partners. Visit www.progressotalent.com today for more information.